Hey guys, it's Robin, R Silent Crafts, and welcome to my studio. Earlier this month on one of my live streams, we did the jelly roll race. Due to some technical difficulties, that video is no longer available. So what I thought I would do is to just go ahead and make another jelly roll race, do a little time-lapse video for you guys so you can catch all those tips and tricks that we talked about on that live stream. It was a very popular video, so I want to keep something on my channel available to y'all who want to check out a jelly roll race, come back and make another one, or any new people that happen to come by. Now that video was over 2.5 hours long because we did it from start to finish with a lot of chatting, tips and tricks, and sewing and stopping and pausing. So today I'm going to give you some information in the beginning, then I'm going to go ahead and do a time lapse. It takes me just under an hour to sew a jelly roll race from start to finish. Jelly Roll is a name brand from Moda of, it's a round thing that looks like a jelly roll because it goes in a circle, and it's all the fabrics from one line. You tend to get 40 strips that measure 2.5 inches wide and by the width of fabric, which is anywhere from 40 to 42 inches. I don't have a jelly roll. I decided to just go into my stash again and I pulled out, I don't have 40 different fabrics. I have several that are repeated, but I have 40 strips that are 2.5 inches wide by width of fabric. On a previous jelly roll, I used just scraps of fabrics. So I had some pieces that were only 5 or 6 inches long and other pieces that were 15 or 20, all the way up to the 40 inches. If you're going to use a scrappy one like that from your stash, you want to make sure they're at least 5 inches, because when we start sewing them together, the seams are going to eat up a little bit of it. And if we do the diagonal ones, you won't have very much fabric left in the center. So there's really no sense in doing it. Which brings me to our first step. What we want to do is, a lot of people just open up their jelly roll and use it as is. I went through and I made sure that I didn't have any two fabrics together. I have some that have five of these, I believe, so I just laid them out 5 stacks and I just put all my fabrics down one by one just to make sure there wasn't two directly in a row. Totally up to you. On the jelly roll race, they just tend to find themselves, find their partners, and end up somehow together anyways. So you might not want to spend a lot of time worrying about placement of exactly where everything is. If you were to go to a guild meeting, from what I've been reading online and the videos I've been watching, they tend to put all of their strips together and sew them together before they get to their guild meeting. So when they do the race, they have one long strip, of all 40 of them, end to end, that measures 1,600 inches on average. That's why it's also called a 1,600 quilt. There are several variations of this project that you can check out on Pinterest. I'm just going to show you the one version that I do. I like to take my ends and I like to stitch them together like I do my binding, and I do it on a diagonal so that I have this 45-degree line on all of them. I like the way it kind of adds that little bit of a slice of movement to my quilt, but you can just as easily put them together like this, do a 1/4 inch seam, and then you would have a straight line. One of the variations is they like to take a solid piece of fabric. Maybe for this one with all my wild crazy colors, I might want a bright yellow. So they would take a 2.5 inch square. We're just going to pretend today, and they would sew it in between all of their pieces. So all of these would be a bright yellow or a black or a white or a red. I think if you did a black and gray quilt, it looks really cool if you have one red square in it. When you do it this way, you tend to do your ends, butt them together and not on the diagonal. If you wanted it on the diagonal, I'd suggest you'd have to have a larger piece of your solid color in here just to help it, because as I mentioned, you're going to lose this whole bit right here that you're going to cut off. So if you only have a 2.5 inch strip, put it on right here, and then you put this one on, you're not going to have any of your colored left at all. But there are plenty of variations that you can choose online. There are plenty of blog posts and videos, ideas on Pinterest what to do after your quilt is done. I have a video coming up on the 29th where I talk a little bit about the variations and what I've done with 2 of my jelly roll race quilts. This is my 3rd one. I'm going to go ahead and set up the time lapse right now. I'm going to stitch these all together, and then I will talk you through the process as we're watching the video go. So our first step is to sew them all together end to end so that you have one long strip that's 2.5 inches wide and 1,600 inches long. To keep your pieces from lining up together, you need to cut 18 to 20 inches off of one of your strips. You can either do that before you sew them all together or before you go to the step where you're folding it in half and doing the first piece. I did cut all my little triangle off here. So here I cut off all my pieces, and I'm going to cut off that 18 inches. You're going to take the very beginning of your 1,600 strip and the very end, and you're going to put them right sides together. And then you're going to sew them all along. But don't forget to cut off 18 inches off of the first piece. If you're doing a totally scrappy one, you don't have to, because if all of your pieces aren't 40 inches long, they'll just automatically not line up and you'll be fine. So the process here is every time you get to the end, you're going to have a fold on the end. You're going to cut that fold, and then you're going to go ahead and take the beginning and the end, lay them right sides together, and sew that one long seam again. I like to make sure that my strips are perfectly flat. I go across and I make sure everything's even so that there's no twists at the end. That allows me to have nice even edges to the side of my quilt and no twists. If you do happen to have a twist when you get to the end, then you have to cut it with your scissors, then just go ahead and do the best you can and cut it, and you'll just have to trim up the ends. That first long strip, when you're taking your 1,600, you're folding it in half, and you have to sew an 800-inch seam, takes forever. You're going to wonder why you're doing this. Take some breaks if you're not doing the race. This is really strenuous on the back. It makes your back a little achy because of the way you're sitting and everything like that. And it just gets to be a little bit uncomfortable and boring. So put on an audiobook, put on a YouTube video, and have a little bit of fun. So when you have your two strips that are sewed together, you're going to take your beginning end and then your last bit of that end, and you're going to fold it in half again, right sides together, and sew a long seam down the right hand side. This seam is only going to be 400 inches, so you're going to be in good shape. You're going to keep doing that until you have 13 rows. So you're going to have 16 and 16, fold it in half. It's not a very long seam at all. It goes super quick at this point, and you're going to think you're a genius because you just made a quilt top in less than an hour. Or if it takes you a couple days, no big deal. If you're not doing a race, I highly recommend pressing the seams as you go. It'll also help you to keep them from being twisted, and you won't have to press an entire quilt at the end. Remember, check down in the description for other info. So there you go, it's all done. This time it took me, I think, an hour and 10 or 15 minutes. But yeah, you get tired after a while if you're just doing it all in one run. And it's really interesting, even though I tried a little bit to separate the different colors and the fabrics and lights and darks, it, like I said, it does whatever it wants to do. It clumped up here and there. We've got fabrics that are identical, that no matter what I did, they're going to go together. But if you're using a regular jelly roll and it has one or two of each color, then you're going to be fine. Plus, it all just blends together. So thanks for hanging out with me and making yet another jelly roll race quilt. If you are part of our Facebook group, if not, there's a link down below in the description box to come on over and show us what your jelly roll quilt looks like. Everybody's looks different. Most of us either we're doing a baby size or just doing the regular old lap size. It's a great way to make a fast quilt in a weekend, in a couple days, in a week, to donate it or to make it for someone in school or church or family in your neighborhood. Again, all the information is down below in the description box if you want to change it up or to hear about the variations with the math and what goes on. Check out Pinterest for any other ways to decorate or change up your jelly roll quilt. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!